For the discussion on China-Russia relations in Moscow, Yuri Tavrovsky, chairman of the supervisory board of the China Institute with Russian Academy of Sciences. In Beijing, Mr. Rong Ying, senior research fellow from the China Institute of International Studies. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. President Putin's visit to China certainly is coming at a very important time. First overseas trip as the president of Russia, with the latest swearing in the Kremlin. Mr. Tavrovsky, how much do you see the transformation of policies toward China from Russian side?
I'm absolutely sure that Moscow's policy towards China will be stable, will continue to develop. I don't think there'll be great leaps forward. There'll be just continuous progress. Very stable progress, and I hope this visit will be very good both for China and Russia and for the stability in the world.
Mr. Rong, we see China has been quite busy with its diplomacy in recent months, for example, to Europe, including France, Serbia, Hungary. So now, how is China looking at this important period of time in terms of its relations with Russia?
Yeah, it's a very major, very important and a major event in terms of China-Russia relationship. And then also I think it's a major event for China's diplomacy with Chinese characteristics. We have seen the past few months, very proactive China's diplomacy covering not only important bilateral relationship, but also on major regional and the global issues. And China and Russia relationship is one of the most important relations for China's diplomacy. So China is very much looking forward to welcoming President Putin's first state visit after he won the election.
Now, Mr. Rong, we understand there are not only bilateral issues, but also issues that will have an impact on the overall situation in Europe and beyond when Chinese president is talking to the Russian president this time. For example, about the Russian-Ukraine crisis. So how do you see these issues likely to have an impact and interaction with the China-Russia bilateral relations?
Well, certainly, I think the hotspot issues or regional issues like the Ukraine crisis and Middle East and others are high on the agenda. But I think it is just a part of the conversation. The most important thing, as far as I can see from the visit, is to further deepening and expanding the bilateral relationship in the context where politically the relationship is so profound and solid, and economically, I think there are rooms to explore, and culturally, there are also quite a lot we need to work on. And this is all happened in the context where, first and foremost, this year marks the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations, and also I think in terms of the first sort of state visit of President Putin, and of course in terms of cultural diplomacy, China and Russia, the two presidents agreed to designate the year for culture. So regional global issues certainly are very much on the agenda. But I think, as far as I can see, the two presidents, the two countries are going to approach these issues in a broader context, where China and Russia are two most important countries, member of the UN Security Council, and their views and their way of managing their relationship and their views and the positions are going to certainly have a far-reaching and strategic bearings on managing these issues.
Mr. Tavrovsky, the world is looking at this interaction between the two presidents of China and Russia, especially after President Putin sworn in the Kremlin this time. Now, how do you see the relationship between regional and international issues like Russian-Ukraine crisis and the Middle East, and the bilateral relations between the two countries? How will they interact with one another, from your understanding?
In March last year, meeting in the Kremlin, Xi Jinping told President Putin that there are great changes going on in the world that we haven't seen for 100 years. And we are moving those changes. And I think this strategy is very valid today, and it will be further discussed and developed during this visit. And both presidents will discuss international crises in Ukraine, in the Middle East, in South China Sea, and they'll have some practical program of what is to be done.
Mr. Rong, if I remember right, the trip that Chinese president made to Europe, the key words is about peace, development, about cooperation, and also about win-win. Of course, there are other keywords also the Chinese president used in various occasions. But the general impression, if you look at the media reports, are suggesting in that direction from both sides. So, Mr. Rong, how do you see China's reading of the realities of the world today? And how will China's reading of the realities of today, strategically speaking, of course, will impact on China's pragmatic approach and strategic approach to Russia?
It is true. I think China has very much, following the transformation unprecedented in 100 years. These changes, this transformation certainly are impacting in an unprecedented way, not only to countries, major countries like China and Russia, but also certainly the bilateral relationship and also its respective sort of way or approach to, and certainly thinkings towards its outside world and the relationship. I think it is true, China and Russia had we called all-round comprehensive strategic coordination and cooperation. And it has become a very important dimension for China and Russia in promoting, in pursuing their relationship to strengthen to the mutual understandings and to by sharing their respective views, positions on that. So I think the visit itself provides a very important opportunity for China and certainly for Russia, for the two presidents to compare their notes, but more importantly, to deepen their understandings of not only what is happening in the world, but also, I think, more importantly, I think the impact on the two countries and how they can further deepening and their coordination and the cooperation. But I think, having said that, I have also made very clear, China and Russia, this is a new type of relationship. The new type of relationship featuring no confrontation, no sort of alliance, and not against third party. It's a new type of international relation. It's an example, new type of relationship. And China's position on the questions like Ukraine crisis, like Middle East and others are very well known. And China have in the past enjoyed this kind of conversation and cooperation with Russia. And I think, again, China's interaction with Europe, and for the recent visit you mentioned to France and others, and previously with the United States, all shows that China has its own positions, and these positions certainly have been very well understood. But I believe that in this fast changing world, the visit itself, I think President Xi and President Putin were going to have a very good conversation.
one could argue trade is only one aspect of China-Russia relations. And yet we know both countries are pragmatic, given their history and given their current challenges and opportunities. So how do you see the Eurasian corridor, together with China's and others' cooperation on Belt and Road Initiative, likely to have more chemistry in the short and the middle term? Maybe that's the important question to ask as well, Mr. Tavrovsky.
Absolutely. During the third summit of BRI in Beijing last year, President Putin put forward new ideas of extending those corridors, infrastructure corridors in Eurasia. And it is very important both for China and Russia and for Eurasia in general, for the world in general. And I think they'll continue discussions. Because right now, Russo-Chinese trade have two big bottlenecks. One bottleneck is transportation. There are trains waiting to cross the border for days, sometimes weeks, because the transportation network was not meant to serve that big volume of trade which now Russia and China has. So that bottleneck must be somehow destroyed. Another bottleneck is financial system. Russian banks don't have direct relationship with some Chinese banks. That problem also needs, first of all, a political solution. I think two leaders must say something, and they will say something this time. Some new banks should be established. Something must be done.
All right.
And then we'll have our trade expanding. Last year it was $240 billion. And for this year, there are some estimates it will be $300 billion. Corridors going through Russia will be extremely important for trade with Europe, with other nations. Another question to discuss is Arctic cooperation in Arctic, in North Route, and Russia was very cautious to invite China to take part in this part of the world. But after this third summit of BRI, China was invited to take part.
On the other hand, how do you see these bilateral trade, financial issues and questions likely to be further discussed in the multilateral mechanism, such as the already existing New Development Bank, which is of emerging economies, China, Russia included? Certainly, Belt and Road Initiative is very much a multilateral, if not international cooperation. So how do you see this bilateral discussion will be shaped by the multilateral mechanism already existing over there?
It is true. I think given the political trust between the two countries and certainly the two leaders, very much now the issue that how the two presidents, taking advantage of this visit to give further strategic guidance in managing, in addressing the specific issues arising from the past and the current and certainly future sort of cooperation, economic trade cooperation. And this is very much important. And at this moment, I believe that we are all certainly facing, if you look at the trade and the investing is, I think to transform the relationship, this really practical cooperation from emphasizing on quantity to quality. And some of the issues are practical. I think it can be addressed by the technical or practical way. But the other issues have to be really related, have to be addressed at the political level, at the strategic level. And one area which you mentioned, is some of the issues I think may go beyond the bilateral. It need to look at the perspective of multilateral, or at least I think minilateral, because China and Russia are also important members of BRICS and SCO and others. And this has also to be related, the answer to that, as related to the danger or the risk that in this world, there are efforts by the West, by the United States in particular, to pursue decoupling or de-risking, to divide the two world into two different sort of contrasting or dividing opposing camps. This is not good. This is something I think China would like to talk with Russia.
Rongying, Yuri Tavrovsky, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.